In this explanation, I'll be tying up the summary of the game with the conclusion so that we can get a broader picture of what actually happens.
Now with investigator journalist Miles Upshaw. Starting from the beginning, Miles already states the presence of fear within him as soon as he walks towards the asylum seeking entry. After the first encounter with a former Murkoff security soldier, Miles is convinced this hellhole is not worth the trip in the long run. After that, he immediately encounters Chris Walker, former security officer of the asylum, which not only gives Miles concrete evidence that things here in the asylum hit the fan and Murkoff is trying to regain control over the current incident. Next we have the drop down onto the main floor / entrance of the asylum, where Pastor Martin finds Miles and notices his camera. Hence, Pastor Miles has lost his sanity from the overwhelming amount of exposure to what Murkoff has conducted within the asylum. Anyhow, Pastor Martin says to Miles that he is an apostle. Also, Pastor Martin immediately says he is a natural host to the Walrider because he knew as his apostle he would see everything and experience a harsh environment of the asylum. Therefore, giving reason for Pastor Martin not to kill him, even though his 2 followers / bodyguards, apparently brothers, want to kill Miles. Now proceeding on to the first visual encounter of the Walrider through the security feed. Before Miles is knocked out unconscious via tranquilizer / injection, we get to see Walrider tear the last of the Murkoff squadron soldiers to shreds, guarding Professor Wernick. At this point, Miles is intrigued, frightened, and panicked. Fast forward through all nonsense up until we meet up with Dr. Traeger, a hired Murkoff employee. Miles loses 2 of his fingers, the ring on the left and the index finger on the right. Now Miles is exposed to a short brief moment of intense pain. So let's set up the resume of experiences in the asylum so far. Intense pain, fear, adrenaline rush, and panic. Fast forward again to where we reach the laboratory. Project Walrider was to create the perfect human being. Mind over body. Immortality using psychomatics, nanites to envelop within the host. Now the twist, this process involved the nanites to develop / adapt / evolve within the host's mind and body. The only problem was to remove the element of the body so that the mind is unchained. And the only way to achieve this was for the host to experience psychological detriments. Artificial Host 1, Billy, 15 years old, entry to asylum due to loss of mother, psychological breakdown, scared, emotional pain. German scientist takes in Billy as his test subject to Project Walrider. In order for Billy to become a viable host, he had to ensure excruciating pain via chamber ball to the machine, wires / needles penetrating his body, also placed into a painful resting position. Now the juicy part. Host 2, Miles Upshaw, a natural host. Age 24, entry to the asylum of his own will. Psychological breakdown, fear, panic, intense pain, adrenaline rush, traumatized. Body composition, lost 2 fingers, broken ribs, broken leg, shrapnel and glass in his body. Now for Project Walrider. The host must meet the following as stated in the documents acquired in the lab. 1. Fear. 2. Intense / excruciating pain. 3. Traumatic detriments. When Miles killed Billy, he destroyed the vessel, the body. Given some time, Billy would have been permanently dead. His superior form, if you will, the Walrider, would have been eradicated as well. But within seconds, Billy made Miles his new vessel, since Miles fit the requirement. As for Miles, he thought he had killed Billy, when really Billy was living inside of him. When the soldiers killed Miles, yes, killed, Billy released himself again to quickly find a new host. Here is the twist. Did Billy choose one of Murkoff's soldiers as a viable host, or the scientist? Billy and the Dr. Wernicke shared a father and son bond. That is why he was the only one left untouched. Plus, Dr. Wernicke is old, and has very well experienced a plethora of things. Little iffy grammar there. That's the question you need to be asking yourself. Billy and the Dr. Wernicke shared a father and son bond. That is why he was the only one left untouched. Plus, Dr. Wernicke is old, and has very well experienced a plethora of things. German scientists are working on nanotechnology among other things for the Nazis. German scientists manages to create some form of sentient cloud of nanomachines. Basically, what they did alters your own body to make your cells produce additional molecules. Those extra molecules make up the nanomachines. So now your cells do normal cell things, but also produce tiny little robots. They also mentioned something about carcinogenic research, so it's likely that they use the properties of cancer, the part where the cell reproduces a lot, to in some way boost the production of these machines. Whatever the scientist created, it killed most of the Nazis he worked for. He let the Nazi survivors believe that it was the Walrider, some form of mythical beast from German legend that messed with people as they slept. He allowed the rest of the Nazis to kill themselves in the hopes that it might release some sort of spirit thing like the patient did. Of course, since they didn't have whatever therapy they were giving the patient, all that really happened was their death. At the end of World War II, when the US found all the dead camps and horrible labs that the Germans and Japanese had set up, they pardoned some of the Nazis and Japanese scientists in exchange for their research. In some cases, the US even hired these scientists in order to conduct slightly more humane extensions of their research. That's not game lore, that's real life. Many of the technologies that were taken for granted now really were due in part to the research done by Nazis and Japanese scientists. As horrible as it is, modern medicine was advanced greatly due to the downright evil experiments done by these scientists. Anyhow, this ties into the game because it's really heavily hinted all over that this supposedly dead German scientist was actually smuggled into the country at the end of World War II due to his research. One of the documents says that it was much about hiring him for his research as it was hiring him to keep him out of enemy hands. This is where MKULTRE project, another real thing, comes in. In real life, the project had to do with hypnosis and personality augmentation. The details as far as how successful they were, or what the real aim was, remain scarce and sketchy. But in the game's lore, the Murkoff Corporation hires some of the guys from that, heading the team with the German scientist. He names the research Project Walrider. Murkoff Corporation buys the asylum and reopens it. Project Walrider, headed by the German scientist, takes the mentally ill that Murkoff Corporation provides and uses some combination of sleep therapy, hypnosis, and medical mucking about to create test subjects for that big machine at the end. The ultimate goal seemed to be military application. I would guess that they thought they could use the soldiers as hosts to create these nanomachine clouds, and then those nanomachine clouds would do to the enemy soldiers what the Walrider does to everyone in the game. It's another one of those evil superweapon projects gone wrong, using the mentally ill as test subjects because people don't seem to care too much what happens to them. The big guy, Chris Walker, is a failed test subject. Presumably the carcinogenic part of the research causes him to bulk up like crazy. Murkoff has tons of problems with this guy even before things go off the rails. I can't remember exactly what his backstory was, but we'll touch on that a bit more later. Billy Hope becomes the first successful test subject. Unfortunately, this means he creates a scary cloud of sentient nanomachines. All hell breaks loose, by which I mean most of the test subjects break loose while the cloud kills all the staff. Almost everybody dies, either at the hands of the patients or at the hands of the nanomachine cloud. From here on out, the patients refer to it as the Walrider. Pastor Martin likely already had some issues, but he finally found something to worship in the Walrider. It's invisible, it kills all the guards and doctors that hurt him while more or less sparing the patients. As far as salvation figures go, the Walrider makes a pretty good candidate for some sort of god for him to worship. At some point, the Naked Twins and a few others join the congregation. They're very much free agents, but they respect Pastor Martin enough to not kill you while he's around and leave you alone after his death. Chris Walker, free from his contamination, begins most of everything. I'm not certain at the end of the game why he was so keen on killing you, but hey, everyone's gonna have a hobby. We see him kill others. It's likely that he just fixated on you because you got away. I wasn't 100% certain of his backstory. He might have been one of the staff originally, which could explain him attempting to protect the secrets of the facility. It's written in the notes that he babbles about containment. Either way, he's free at this point in the story. You know the rest from there. You enter the story here. Glorious, wonderful, defenseless you. You're there to record some conspiracy you've been tipped off to. At that point, you played through the story, so I'll skip most of that. The only person worth mentioning that I haven't yet is Traeger. It's never really certain what his deal is. He's an executive, not a doctor. Either way, he went crazy from working with the stuff Murkoff had been doing, or he is another one of those insane scientists that Murkoff hired but didn't list on their payroll. Some of the documents cast doubt on both theories. They say that Billy somehow finds out stuff about the corporation and Project Walrider through blood memories provided by Dr. Traeger. But the only Traeger they have on file is Richard Traeger, an executive. My own personal theory is that some temporal or spatial anomalies have been created by Project Walrider. Somehow his nanomachine, Ghost, breached containment and provided information to him. That could be the ghost seen by Traeger killing people and spilling executive secrets. The temporal aspect comes in there, as Traeger might not have declared himself a doctor and started messing with people yet. Or maybe he was, and word just hadn't reached the writer or the document yet. Perhaps I missed or misread a document somewhere which mentioned Traeger being one of the patients. Then the ghost would have something to spy on and get information from. Either way, all you need to know, you witness yourself. Traeger is a crazy guy, and he cut your fingers off. It's not likely that he has much connection to the deeper elements of Project Walrider. I'd say at best he'd be a likely candidate for the guy medically prepping the patients for being subjects for Project Walrider. That's if he's a part of it at all. Many of the patients were already crazy, and when they got out, just started doing as crazy people do. It might not matter much when, where, or how Dr. Traeger became what he is, because what's important to you is that he's the guy who cut off your fingers, and he's hell-bent on carving you up some more if he catches you. Now we've skipped to the end, and you're meeting the German scientist. Billy has latched onto him, and regards everyone and everything that looks like staff or soldiers as a threat. The German scientist is as murky on the motives as you are, but tells you that you're most likely not getting out as long as Billy is alive. Given that he's already murdered Chris Walker in front of you, you're inclined to believe him. As for why Billy didn't kill you then and there, it's theorized that Billy didn't see you as a threat yet. Meanwhile, Chris Walker seemed to have some sort of military background or affiliation. If nothing else, he's a huge, hulking monster of a man, and that'd be a threat to a German scientist. So he kills Chris Walker and spares your life, allowing you to meet up with the German scientist. Once you're done with him, you set off to kill Billy so you can escape. So, you kill Billy, in the hopes that this might shut down / destroy the nanomachines and the Walrider. But in the process of cutting the life support, the cloud of nanomachines grabs you a few times and stabs you. The nanomachines disappear, you fall and appear to break a leg, and Billy is killed. Just as you're about to limp your way back out of the facility, doors open and there's a whole squad of soldiers aimed at you. Haha! You've been had! And you've been holding all the evidence of what they've done. You're the best cleanup agent ever, all by accident. The German scientist is present and watches as the soldiers kill you. As you die, the screams and gunfire of the soldiers are the last sounds in your ears. You were carrying the nanomachines in your body when they killed you. Apparently you can jump hosts. Who knew? You certainly didn't, and who would be around who would even know what the nanomachines were capable of? You'd already killed all the doctors, and they were way into uncharted territory. Looks like the cloud of nanomachines has broken loose again, this time with nobody anywhere capable of stopping it, and nothing keeping it in place. The biggest thing to remember is that it never really was a ghost, and that the patients simply thought that a cloud of nanomachines was the mythical Walrider, based off superstition and rumors they heard. Hell, for most of the game you might have been there with them, thinking there was an honest-to-God ghost hunting you down. Nobody really had any way of knowing what the Walrider was until you met the German scientist who told you about it. If you understood all of this already, I suspect the problem is that you just don't like the ending. And that's fine. Just keep in mind that this game was all about the journey. You were supposed to wander throughout the game. You were supposed to question you weren't meant to understand. The designers wanted to keep you guessing as to what was going on. Are these events supernatural? What's up with the patients?
How do X and Y fit into the Z conspiracy? Why did character A do this to me? What happened to character B prior to my arrival?
You're supposed to keep asking these questions. It keeps you going. Looking at it that way, if you still have questions, the game was a huge success. The creators have thought, let's give you an ending that's horrible, just like the rest of the game's events. You'll walk away and you'll still be thinking about the game after you finish.
And you might even discuss it with people.
Waylon Park is a software engineer working at Mount Massive for the Murkoff Corporation. After several encounters working directly with the morphogenic engine and witnessing the torture that Eddie Gluskin endured, he decides to send an email to Miles Upshaw, reporting on the corruption of Mount Massive. Shortly after sending it, he is caught by his employer, Jeremy Blair. As punishment, Blair and Park are committed and forced to endure the tests of the morphogenic engine. However, after the Walrider breaks free and begins causing chaos at Mount Massive, Park manages to escape his restraints, taking a camcorder with him. He roams the facility as surviving guards and personnel try to escape from the newly freed prisoners, trying to find a radio that he can use to contact the authorities. During this time, he consistently eludes a bearded, cannibalistic prisoner named Frank Manera, who wields a mechanical circular saw blade and tries to kill him in many ways, including trapping him in a furnace. Just as Park manages to find a radio, Blair appears and destroys it, insisting that no one can reveal the secret of Mount Massive. He leaves Park to die at the hands of Chris Walker, only for Park to escape. Park eventually wanders into a secluded area of the female ward, where a variant by the name of Dennis, inflicted with dissociative identity disorder, captures and offers him as a sacrifice to a prisoner named Eddie Gluskin, whom he calls the Groom. While initially eluding Gluskin, Park falls into an elevator shaft and gets a piece of debris lodged in his right shin, reducing him to a limp. Park is eventually captured, where he discovers how Gluskin repeatedly tortures and mutilates male prisoners' genitals, treating them like his brides, before brutally killing them. He attempts to kill Park in the same way, but Park manages to escape at the last second with the help of another prisoner who attacks Gluskin. After Gluskin kills the other prisoner and returns to kill Park by hanging him in the gymnasium full of hanging bodies, Park puts up enough resistance so that Gluskin is caught up in the multiple ropes of the pulley system and eventually is impaled by a loose wooden beam. As daylight finally breaks, Park continues throughout the asylum, discovering that Murkoff's paramilitary forces have already arrived at the scene and are killing every person they see. Park manages to elude them as they are all killed by the Walrider, and he manages to make it to the main atrium. There he finds a wounded Blair, lying against the front door and pleading for help. However, as Park approaches, Blair stabs him in the stomach with a glass shard, declaring that no one can know the truth. But before he can deliver the finishing blow, he is attacked and killed by the Walrider. Park staggers out to the open front door and past the military vehicles towards a red Jeep waiting by the security gate. As Park enters the Jeep and starts it up, he notices a dark figure. Miles Upshaw's Walrider-sustained, broken body slowly exiting the asylum with a dark mist surrounding it. He manages to escape and slam through the entry gates just as the figure exits the asylum. In the epilogue scene, a fully recovered Park has gotten in contact with a leaking organization to submit his secret information on Murkoff. Park is sitting at a laptop with a video file of all his recorded video from the asylum ready to be uploaded to the internet. A man associated with the leaking website standing in front of his desk informs him that it will be more than enough evidence to ruin the Murkoff Corporation, but warns Park that doing so will result in Murkoff doing everything it can to punish him in return, including threatening his family. Despite some initial hesitation, Park ultimately decides to take the risk and uploads a video, and the credits roll once he closes the laptop. Hopefully that summary was refreshing for anyone who hasn't played the game for a while. The crucial part of this explanation is that the figure outside the asylum at the end of the game is Miles Upshaw possessed by the Walrider, and that what some people have thought was Miles Upshaw at the end of the game uploading the footage is just another anonymous man involved with the leaking site. There's also been theories that Miles somehow overtook the nanites and he is controlling the Walrider, which makes a little bit of sense given that Waylon Park is the only one to escape the asylum with the footage to bring down Murkoff. But I don't believe there's enough supportive information in the game's universe for that to be a conclusion yet. But that's open to further debate. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.